II is going to explain why it's important to look at purity, that this really completes our study on Christ's words in the Sermon on the Mount regarding adultery in the heart. And he does acknowledge that, with Christ's words about that look of concupiscence, that really expresses the opposite of purity. But at the same time, it's a call to purity in our hearts, right? It's an invitation to purity is how John Paul II put it, which I love that. So to better understand Christ's view of purity and how it was different than the leaders at the time of Judaism, John Paul II, of course, takes us to Scripture. And specifically, he uses the example of how the Pharisees were complaining to Jesus that his disciples weren't washing their hands before eating specifically. And Jesus's response to them really reveals what he believes about what is purity. What does that mean? And Jesus said in response to them, this is from Matthew chapter 15, verses 18 through 20. He said, "But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a man. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man." So John Paul II goes on to explain that, and I think we kind of talked about this in another episode, but these ritual washings really were originally for hygienic purposes, but over time they tended to take on more of a religious meaning. So this really led to kind of a wrong understanding of what moral purity is, just a real focus on the externals, right? And John Paul II says that Christ opposed this in a radical manner when he said that nothing you wash on the outside can make you morally pure. He taught that moral purity comes from the heart.
So, when I read this too, I was really excited with the whole notion that Jesus appeals to the human heart through invitation, not accusing. You're not saying, "Oh, you're wrong." And I thought that is so important when we're dealing with, for me, students or you with your children, that, change comes about because we love them. We're inviting them to a deeper relationship with God, not because we're forever correcting them or making them feel guilty. Our students, we want them to love the faith, but it's an invitation to a relationship. Yeah. So even today, participation in the Mass isn't just physically being there. It's responding to the prayers. It's listening to the prayers. It's listening to the sermon. It is standing when we all stand, kneeling, and so forth. So those things are important. We open ourselves up, and those exterior actions hopefully train us into a deeper interior of beauty that will then come out.
This purity of the heart is continued transformation of the heart. And so it struck me, I've been trying to study more specifically and intentionally building virtue and working on virtues. And in those readings that I have been coming upon, it's really this. It's that I may think I have been really accomplished with some virtue until difficulty arises, and I can be like really strong until I'm pounded down. And then my purity of heart comes out a little wonky. And, it is just a process. It's a transformation. It's really good for me. It just kind of helped me focus a little more on my examination of conscience and made it more real. So, because we're always in transformation. So.
It reminds me that video in marriage prep, they say they interview different couples, and one of the husbands said, "I thought I was really selfless until I got married." And my wife pointed out all the times that I was being very selfish. And so, sometimes you think, "Oh yeah, living by yourself, you're a pretty giving person because you have no one to give to." And that's why we live in community, right? And so, the term "I'm just going through the motions" came to mind when I was reading this section. I mean, very similar to what you were saying, sister, of just yes, we could be physically present or be doing something on the outside, but something totally different is happening on the inside. And I mean, you could even, I also thought of Mass. How many times have I showed up to Mass and just gone through the motions or gone out of obligation instead of truly wanting to receive Christ and Him drawing me into it. I mean, those are two different Mass experiences which look completely the same usually on the outside. And so I think one of the most touching parts, though, for me was, and Sister, you touched on it, was when John Paul II stated, "In this manner, Christ directs an appeal to the human heart. He invites it. He does not accuse it."
Yeah.
And I really think that is the key here, is just the more we force it, the less authentic and the less from the heart it will be. And so I always have this visual of like Jesus sitting on the other side of a door, and he's just waiting for us. He's just waiting for communion with us. But the door handle is only on our side. And so he is not going to barge his way in or force his way in, but he will always be there waiting for us. So it's really our job to open the door and see him, patiently waiting for us. And so I think that is just really kind of a good visual to keep in mind.
So this whole thing made me think of kind of an experience of my childhood, actually. It reminded me of how when I was a kid, I hated cleaning my room. Did not want to do it ever.
You're not alone.
I know. It's so true. Well, anyway, I haven't really changed that much, but I just really didn't want to do it. And so, of course, Mom would tell me, clean your room. And so I don't know also if it was just a little bit of rebellion in me as well. I'm not sure. But I perfected the art of making my room look clean.
Oh.
So, if Mom came in and just, glanced and looked around, I'd be good, right? Good job, Rochelle. But if she were to open a closet or look under my bed, the truth would come out, right? Nope, I might have just shoved everything in the closet and under my bed. And, I think I just didn't want to take the time, right? It would take time. It'd probably keep me from something else that I wanted to do. Maybe I felt overwhelmed with it and I just didn't want to deal with it and I just wanted to shove it away. And I have to be honest, I still struggle with that a little bit. I still shove things in drawers, shove things in closets, and make sure everything looks okay if somebody came over, that kind of thing. And this is something that I actually have talked about in spiritual direction, because I do think there's very much a spiritual thing going on and a parallel there in my life. Sometimes we just want to focus on our appearances, right? And we want to appear like we've got it together and that we're doing okay, but really we're not tending to the thing. We don't want to take a close look at everything that's going on in our hearts, so we just shove it, right? We just shove it in there. And so I think also if I see God's commands as a list of rules that I have to do rather than that's something that's for my good, then I'm probably going to focus more on appearing to keep them rather than actually doing the work and examining my heart. At that. And also just cleaning my room and organizing things, it takes time. It might be uncomfortable. It might keep me from doing things I want. It may mean I have to get rid of something and I'm but I might need that later. So anyway, I think that's what Jesus is saying here, is that you can shove things places, but eventually whatever you have shoved into your heart is going to come out in your life. It's going to make itself manifest, right? And so that's kind of where I was going with that. But it's definitely, now I want to go home and clean my closet or a drawer or something.